بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا ما يهده الله فلا مضل له وما يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أحسن الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل دلالة في النار. Okay, in the last lesson that we had, the Shaykh who's commenting upon this text, Shaikh Shaikh Fawzaan, he said he went through some of the incorrect explanations of the kalima La ilaha illallah that is found with some of the groups present today. So from them he mentioned the tafsir of the people of Wahdatul Wujud, the tafsir of the people of Wahdatul Wujud, and he said that these people that claim that the meaning of La ilaha illallah is La ma'bud illallah, that there's none which is worshipped except Allah. And Shaykh explained how this is incorrect, because this would necessitate that everything that is worshipped, meaning all of the false gods and everything that everybody worships, then that itself is Allah. And the Shaykh said that this is obviously an error, it's a mistake, and this would mean that anyone who worships an idol, cow, a grave, a person, a stone, an angel, a jinn, that these people are in reality worshipping Allah, because Allah is the only thing in existence. So this was batil, this was falsehood. And then the second group were those who said that the meaning of the kalima La ilaha illallah is that there is no one who has the ability to create and to invent and to bring something from nothing and to control and regulate except Allah. And the Shaykh said this is incorrect as well, because this is exactly the same as what the mushrikeen believed. The mushrikun said that Allah is the Khaliq, is Mudabbir, is Razak. They affirmed all of these attributes for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this only goes as far as affirming Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, which is very limited. Then the third group is the tafsir that is given by the Jahmiyyah and the Mu'tazila, are those people who think Tawheed is to negate Allah's names and attributes. Right? So they claim that to affirm a name for Allah or to affirm an attribute for Allah, that would necessitate shirk. And the real Tawheed, in their view, is to completely strip Allah of all names and all attributes, so that He's not described with anything. So the Jahmiyyah say no names, no attributes, and the Mu'tazila say we affirm for Allah names but we don't affirm for Him attributes. The fourth group were the Hizbiyyin and the Ikhwaniyyin and people like that, who explain the kalima La ilaha illallah with a political explanation. They say it means there is no La hakimiyya illallah, there is no hakimiyya except for Allah. And then they restrict the meaning of the kalima to this one idea. And the Shaykh said that this, that the kalima has a very comprehensive and all-inclusive meaning, and it includes all of the acts of worship. And it's not just restricted to just hakimiyya alone. And the Shaykh that this again is incorrect, because the whole of the religion is based upon this all-inclusive meaning of the kalima. Finally, he went through the correct meaning with Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, the correct meaning of La ilaha illallah, which we said was La ma'bud bihaqqin illallah. Right, with this word bihaqqin, there is none that is worshipped in truth except for Allah, because there are many things which are worshipped, but all of them are worshipped in batil, they're worshipped in falsehood. So this is why this is the correct meaning of the kalima. There is none which has the right to be worshipped in truth, bihaqqin, we have to add this word bihaqqin, in truth except for Allah. And then the Shaykh explained how went on to speak about these people who, again in his time, speaking about the people who began to take these people whom they thought had a position with Allah, had a standing with Allah, as a result of which they began to worship them and treat them as intermediaries and intercessors. And then the Shaykh said that this is no different to the deen of the mushrikeen, and then he went on to explain that with 2 points. First of all, that something that will help us understand this is 2 points. First of all, that if we look at the mushrikun of the first times, we find that they affirmed for Allah that He's the creator, the provider, the owner, and so on and so forth, so they affirmed rububiyyah. The second point is, and that this wasn't enough to make them Muslim, this didn't make them Muslim. And the second point is that the thing which made them disbelievers was that they did not affirm for Allah and testify for Allah uluhiyyah, that He has the sole right to be worshipped alone. So that's what we covered last week, and so we're going to continue today's lesson. Then the Shaykh al-Islam continued to elaborate upon this point, continued to expand upon this point, and he said that to completely understand this is that you know that the mushrikeen whom the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam fought against, they used to call upon the righteous, they used to make dua to the righteous, and the likes of the angels, and Isa and his mother alayhim assalam, and Uzair, and others from the awliya. So these were the mushrikeen whom the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam he fought against, that they used to call upon the righteous, such as the angels and Isa and his mother and Uzair and others from the awliya, and they became disbelievers as a result of this. They became disbelievers as a result of this, alongside, even though they affirmed that Allah subhanahu is the Khaliq and the Razzaq and the Mudabbir, even though they affirm that Allah is the creator and the provider and the controller, the one who controls and regulates everything. So here now, what this means, Shaykh Salih al-Fawzaan, he explains that the mushrikun, the very first mushrikun, not all of them worshipped idols. Not all of them worshipped idols. We find that in the thing that they worshipped, they were varied. There were different things that they worshipped. So from them were those who worshipped idols. Some of the mushriks worshipped idols. Others from the mushrikun, they worshipped angels. Others worshipped prophets. Others worshipped the righteous people. However, the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, he fought against all of them, and he didn't distinguish between any one of them. Right? So he didn't say, for example, I'm not going to fight against anyone except for those who worship idols. Now, he never said that. He never distinguished between any of them. And he didn't say, he didn't abandon the people who worshipped Uzair, or the people who worshipped Al-Masih, Isa, or the people who worshipped the righteous. Now, he didn't distinguish. He didn't say, well, I'm going to leave those who worship the righteous people, but I'm going to fight against the people who worship idols. He didn't make any distinction between any of them. Rather, in his time we saw that there were many, all of them differed with each other in what they worshipped, yet the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, he fought against all of them, and he didn't distinguish between any of them. And then the Shaykh continues and he says that we find that those same grave worshippers today, that these grave worshippers today, they say, or they make this claim, that shirk is to worship idols. That shirk is to worship idols. This is an argument that they try to bring. And to worship the awliya is in fact nearness to Allah. It's seeking nearness to Allah and seeking a means towards Him. It's not shirk. Why? Because shirk is only to worship idols. And the Messenger and the Shaykh says, subhanallah, how free is Allah from imperfections. We find that the Messenger, he actually fought all of them. We find that the Messenger, he fought those who worshipped idols, and those who worshipped the angels, and those who worshipped Al-Masih, and those who worshipped Uzair, and those who worshipped the awliya and the salihin. He did not distinguish between anyone amongst them. And we see this clearly in the Quran. In the Quran, there are many verses in the Quran which establish that. So then the Shaykh al-Islam, he continues and he says that when you have come to know this, meaning these points that we've just been through, and these points that he's just explained, you will then come to know the real meaning, or the actual meaning of La ilaha illallah. And you will also come to know that anyone who worshipped, or who tried to aggrandize or worship a prophet or an angel, or tried to seek help or seek rescue by way of him, then such a person has left Islam. And this is the kufr, this is the disbelief for which the Messenger ﷺ fought all of these people. Because these people, they were using these prophets and angels and other than them as a means, as a focal point through which to get whom they worshipped, and as a means of which they sought nearness to Allah. So anyone who did that and directed any of this towards these people, then this is the same disbelief for which the Messenger ﷺ fought all of those people in his time. Then the Shaykh al-Islam, he then goes on to address an argument of these mushrikeen. So he says, if someone said from the mushrikeen that we know that Allah is the creator, He is al-Khaliq, al-Razaq, al-Mudabbir, He's a creator, He's a provider, He's a regulator, controller of all the affairs, but these righteous people are people who bring us closer. They are people who are already close to Allah, and we only call upon them, we only make an oath for them in order that and we seek rescue by way of them, and we seek by way of this to acquire their intercession, to receive their intercession, and to bring their attention towards us, and to seek their intercession. Otherwise, this is the only thing that we seek. Otherwise, we know that Allah is the creator. We understand that Allah is the creator, He's the provider, He's the sustainer, He's the one who controls the affairs. Right, so this is the argument that they bring. This is the argument that they bring. So they say, in essence, we believe that Allah is the creator. We believe all power is in Allah's hands. But we only seek these people because they themselves are close to Allah, and we hope that they will intercede with Allah on our behalf. We hope that they will ask Allah on our behalf. The Shaykh says, if such a person says the likes of this, then say to him that your speech itself is the madhab, is the religion of Abu Jahl and his likes. Right? So this, what you have said, is itself the madhab of Abu Jahl and his likes. And the Shaykh continues, because those people, meaning in the time of the Messenger ﷺ, and whom were addressed by the Quran, they used to call upon Isa, they used to call upon Uzair, they used to call upon the angels, they used to call upon the awliya. We find all of this mentioned in the Quran, Allah mentioning all of this in the Quran. And all of these people, what did they want this? What did they want behind this? What were they seeking behind these actions and this worship? What did they want? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains, and He says, وَالَّذِينَ اتَّخَذُوا مِن دُونِهِ أَوْلِيَاءَ مَا نَعْبُدُهُمْ إِلَّا لِيُقَرِّبُونَ إِلَى اللَّهِ زُلْفَى. They said, Allah says that those whom they took besides Him, besides Allah as awliya, they say that we only worship them in order that they may bring us closer to Allah. Right? So here is one justification, one reason, that they believed and that they thought that by worshipping Isa and Uzair and the angels and the awliya, that they thought or they expected that they would bring them closer to Allah. That's the first reason. That's Surah Zumar, Surah 39, verse 3. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says in another verse, وَيَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ مَا لَا يَضُرُّهُمْ وَلَا يَنْفَعُهُمْ وَيَقُولُونَ هَؤُلَاءِ شُفَعَاؤُنَا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ. They worship besides Allah that which does not harm them, nor does it benefit them, and then they say these are our intercessors with Allah. Here's the second reason, that they believe that these people would intercede for them with Allah. This is Surah Yunus, Surah 10 verse 18. So here are two reasons. And then the Shaikh Salih Al-Fawzaan, he comments upon this, what the Shaykh has said, and he says that first of all, the first point is that anyone who tries to negate that making supplication to the Salihin is shirk, anyone who tries to deny this, and who says that what we are really trying to do is to make tawassul to Allah, right? To seek nearness to Allah and closeness to Allah, and use them just as a means to becoming closer to Allah. Then it is said to such a person that this speech of yours is the madhab of Abu Jahl and Abu Lahab and their likes. Because these very same people, they never ever said, these people, they said and they affirmed that there is no one who creates or provides or gives life or takes life or who controls the affairs except Allah. Well, this is what Abu Jahl said. This is what Abu Lahab said. However, we only take these as our gods, meaning those whom they worship, we only take them as our gods so that they may bring us closer to Allah. This is what they said. And then they bring the verse, and then as Allah mentioned in the same verse that we've just quoted, that they worship besides Allah that which cannot harm them nor bring them benefit, and then they say these are our interceders with Allah. And so we find that the mushrikun of the very first times, those what they wanted from those whom they were worshipping was tawassut, meaning that they wanted them to become intermediaries between themselves and between Allah, so that they could argue in their favor with Allah. Right? So they could ask for Allah on their behalf and make dua to Allah on their behalf and ask for them on their behalf. This is what the mushrikun said, and this is what their intention was behind worshipping these things, behind worshipping Uzair and Isa and the prophets and the angels and the righteous people. This is what they actually intended. This is what they decide. And this was exactly what Abu Jahl and Abu Lahab, what they said. This was their justification, this was their reasoning. And again, they never once said that these angels or prophets or righteous people that they create and they provide, they didn't affirm that. They negated that, and they affirmed that only for Allah. But the only two things that they said was that these will intercede on our behalf with Allah, and that they will bring us closer to Allah. And then they claim that this itself is praising Allah and glorifying Allah. Right? So then they try to justify this and say that this action of ours, of going through these people towards Allah, that itself is praising Allah and glorifying Allah. And this, of course, is nonsense. And then the Shaykh continues, Shaykh al-Islam, he says that when you have reflected upon this point very good, and you reflected upon it very well, and you've come to know that the kuffar whom we've spoken about, that they themselves used to testify Tawheed for Allah, Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, that they affirmed for Allah Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. The kuffar, they did that. We've already seen that. And this Rububiyyah is to affirm for Allah, or to make Allah unique in His actions of al-rizq, of al-khalq, of creatorship, and al-rizq, providing sustenance, and tadbir, and regulate Allah, controlling the affairs. They affirm this for Allah. But at the same time, they would worship Isa and the angels and the prophets, and what they intended behind this was to become closer to Allah, and so that these people or angels would intercede for them. Right? So if you hold this point, if you understand this point, and you just hold this in your mind for a second, you understand this point, you will then come to realize that amongst the kuffar, you will also come to realize that amongst the kuffar, especially the Christians, from them are those people who worship Allah day and night. Right? They worship Allah day and night. And they abandon the dunya. They leave the dunya, they make zuhud from the dunya. And they give charity. Right? So they give charity. Right? So they give charity. And they they keep away from the people. They generally keep away from the people, and they perform all of these actions of worship. Yet despite all of that, this person, as the Shaykh says, وَهُوَ مَعَ هَذَا كَافِرٌ عَدُوٌ لِلَّهِ مُخَلَّدٌ فِي النَّارِ. But this person is a kafir, he is an enemy to Allah, he will remain eternally in the fire as a result of his belief. As a result of his belief in Isa or others from the awliya. Meaning his belief that Isa is an interceder for him, that Isa is an intermediary by whom he can worship, whether it be Isa, whether it be Uzair, or whether it be anyone else from the awliya. It was that made him a kafir. Despite him believing in al-rububiyyah, worshipping Allah day and night, giving charity, abandoning the dunya, doing so many righteous actions, it was that belief that made him a kafir, a mushrik, and an enemy to Allah. And also, as the Shaykh continues, because he called upon him, he made supplication to him, and he sacrificed to him, or he made an oath to him. So when you understand all of this, when you bring all of this to mind, you understand all of this, and you reflect upon all of this, then you will actually come to realize the actual characteristic of Islam. It will become clear to you the actual characteristic of Islam that your Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, that he called the people to. You will now come to realize what is this Islam, what is its characteristic that your Prophet called to. And it will also become clear to you that many of the people actually abandon the Messenger ﷺ, or they actually leave this characteristic of Islam. They actually leave this characteristic of Islam, and it will become clear to you the meaning of the Prophet ﷺ. Bada al-Islamu ghariban wa sayaudu ghariban kama bada. It will become clear to you that Islam, the meaning of the statement of the Messenger, that Islam began as something strange, and it will come back as something strange. Then the Shaykh Fawzaan, he just comments upon this passage. He says that when we look at the Ruhban, these monks from amongst the Christians, we find that they worship Allah day and night. They cry out of the awe of Allah. But at the same time, and all the other actions that were mentioned, but at the same time they say Al-Masih Ibn Allah. They say that the Christ is the son of Allah. Or they say that Allah is Al-Masih Ibn Maryam. Or they say that Allah is one of three. And at the same time they cry, they worship, but none of this benefits them. None of this is of benefit to them, because they haven't made their worship sincerely for Allah the Mighty and Majestic. And the likes of these people, of this example here, are the worshippers of the graves today. They are exactly the same as the Christians. And then the Shaykh says that the correct Islam is a stranger today. This is how Islam is. That the correct Islam that Shaykh al-Islam Muhammed Ibn Abdul Wahaab is describing is a stranger today. But as for the Islam which is claimed, this so-called claimed Islam, we find that the Muslims today, they are increasing, so many in number, but Islam, the correct Islam, is just becoming more and more strange. And if all of this, these so many millions of Muslims, if their Islam was the correct Islam that's just been described, then you would have found that no one in the world would have been able to stand in front of them. So then he mentions how example of the Yahud, and he mentions some characteristics of the Yahud, how the Yahud were afflicted with humiliation and poverty, and how the Shaykh goes on to describe some of how Allah turned them in the form of certain animals, and how these people today, like the apes and swines, and how the likes of these people today, that they have so much control and power over the lands of the Muslims. And the Muslims who were with the Prophet ﷺ in the Battle of Badr, their number was only 310 odd in number. And what did they achieve? Yet what did they achieve? The Sahaba in relation to the people upon the earth, how many were they? Yet despite that, they conquered so many places, right? And they defeated the Roman emperor, and likewise the Persian emperor, the Persian king, and the Roman, and they became leaders of the whole of the world. Why? Because they were Muslims with the correct Islam. It wasn't an Islam that was just claimed, which we have today. So the Shaykh just explains, the results of a correct Islam, and how today you find that the Muslimin, look at how they subdued, humiliated, who by people whose characteristics that we've just looked at. Then Shaykh al-Islam continues and he says that by Allah, my brothers, Shaykh Muhammed Ibn Abdul Wahaab, he says, by Allah, my brothers, hold fast to the foundation of your religion, to its beginning, to its end, to its foundation, to its foremost part, which is the testimony that there is none which has the right to be worshipped in truth except Allah. And you should know its meaning, you should love it, so you should know its meaning, and you should love it, you should love this statement, and you should love its people, and make its people your brothers, even if they are far and distant from you. And disbelieve in at-tawaghit, and hate them and show enmity towards them, and have enmity and hate towards those who love them, meaning love the tawaghit, or who argues on their behalf, or who doesn't disbelieve in them, or who doesn't disbelieve them. To disbelieve in at-tawaghit, show enmity towards them and hate those who love them, or who argues for them, or who doesn't disbelieve in them. Or you say that I have nothing, there's nothing for me, nothing that they have over me. And or you can say Allah has not burdened me or tasked me by way of them. Allah hasn't put any responsibility over me with respect to them. So anyone who says anyone who remains silent and who says that there's nothing upon me with regard to them, meaning that I don't need to hold a position regarding them, or who says that Allah hasn't made any responsibility for me with regard to them. So anyone who says this, then this person has lied, this is a lie upon Allah, and he has fabricated. What the Shaykh is explaining, he's saying that what is upon a Muslim is to know the kalima, to believe in it, to love it, and to love its people, and at the same time to hate the tawaghit, and to disbelieve in them, and to hate them, and to hate those who love them, and to hate those who don't disbelieve in them. And as for a person who comes in, he says, well, there's nothing, I don't need to hold a position regarding the tawaghit. Allah hasn't burdened me with anything in this regard. I don't have any responsibility in this regard. So anyone who comes along and he says this, then this person, he has lied upon Allah, and he's made a fabrication. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made this a burden upon him. Allah has made this responsibility upon him. He's made him hold this position towards them. He's made it obligatory upon him to disbelieve in them and to free himself from them, even if they were his brothers and his offspring. Then the Shaykh continues and he says, so by Allah, my brothers, hold on to all of that, in order that you may meet your Lord whilst you are not associating any partners with him. And may Allah take us as Muslimin, meaning take us in death as Muslimin, and make us together with the Salihin. And then the Shaykh says, and let us finish this kalam or this speech by a verse that Allah has mentioned in His book, on account of which the kufr of the mushrikeen of our times will become clear to you. It will become clear to you that the kufr of the mushrikeen in our times is greater than the kufr of those whom the Messenger ﷺ fought against. And then he brings this verse, and this verse, the Shaykh says, قال الله تعالى وَإِذَا مَسَّكُمُ الضُّرُّ فِي الْبَحْرِ ضَلَّ مَنْ تَدْعُونَ إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ فَلَمَّا نَجَّاكُمْ إِلَى الْبَرِّ أَعْرَضْتُمْ وَكَانَ الْإِنسَانُ كَفُورًا. Surah Al-Isra, Surah 17, verse 67. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that when harm or hardship touches you or afflicts you on the sea, then everything that you worship is lost, meaning everything that you worship is forgotten, except for Him, meaning except for Allah. And then when He saves you and delivers you upon the land, you turn away, meaning they turn back and they begin worshipping other than Allah again. And mankind is ever ungrateful. So the Shaykh says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned about the kuffar, that when some harm or some calamity comes to them, they abandon all of their chiefs and their mashayikh, these people that they worship. And so they don't call upon any single one of them. They don't call upon any of them. They don't seek rescue from any one of them. Rather, in that time of hardship, they make their worship purely and sincerely for Allah alone, without any partners, and they seek rescue from Him alone. And then when this safety and this ease comes back to them, when Allah saved them, brought them back to the land, then they begin to make this shirk again. And then you see, the Shaykh says, and then you see the mushrikeen of our time, and maybe some of these people might even claim that he's from the people of knowledge. He might even claim that he's from the people of knowledge. And some of them, and then you will see this person, he will have zuhud, he will be someone who abandons the world, the worldly things. He will have ijtihad, meaning he will strive in the religion. He will have worship. This is how he is. He's like this. Yet, when some hardship comes to him, when some calamity comes to him, he stands up and he makes istighatha. He seeks rescue and help from other than Allah. Someone, for example, like Abdul Qadir Al-Jilani, he will call upon him, seek aid by way of him, or someone else who is known. Or even greater than those, for example, Zayd bin al-Khattab or Az-Zubayr. Or even greater than those, such as the likes of the Messenger ﷺ. This is what these people will do. This is how these people will fall into this. People who are they might even consider themselves to be people of knowledge, and this is what they fall into. So from Allah is all aid sought. And even greater than this, or even greater than all of this, is that some of them will even seek aid and help by the tawaghit. So let's leave aside the righteous people, from the righteous people, the Sahaba, the Prophets. Some of them will even seek aid and seek rescue from the tawaghit and from the disbelievers and the apostates, those who are apostates themselves, not even Muslims. And then the Shaykh gives some examples of some people in his time who are like this, like Shamsan and Idris, and someone who's called Al-Ashqar and Yusuf and their likes. These are just names of people in his time, people who are tawaghit, who are kuffar, who are apostates and heretics, because of what they believe and because of the fact that they call people to worship them. So even worse is that some people will call upon the likes of them, let alone leaving aside the prophets and the righteous people. So the Shaykh says, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best, and all praise is due to Allah from its beginning to its end, and praise and salutations upon our Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, upon his family and his companionship, all of his companionship. Ameen. And that's the end of the text. And then the Shaykh Shaikh Fawzaan just comments upon this final passage, and so he says that the kufr of the people of our time is greater than the kufr of the very first mushrikeen. It's greater than the kufr of Abu Jahl and Abu Lahab. Right? The kufr of the mushriks of our time is greater than the kufr of Abu Jahl and Abu Lahab, because the mushrikeen of the very first times, they used to commit shirk with Allah in the times of ease. In the times of ease, and they would make their worship purely and sincerely for Allah in the times of hardship, because they knew that there is no one who can remove this hardship and this calamity from them except Allah. As for the mushriks of our time, then they, in the times of hardship, they are even greater in their shirk than in the times of ease. Right? They are even more severe in their shirk than in the times of ease. So when they fall into some hardship or some difficulty, they begin to call upon their gods. All of them, they call upon their ma'bud, whoever it might be, in order that he may save them from, for example, drowning in the sea, or from some other kind of danger. And every time the danger that they fall into is greater and more severe, their shirk becomes greater and more severe. The shirk increases and becomes more severe. So these people are more severe in their shirk than the mushrikeen of the very first time. And then the Shaykh goes on to just explain some of the names that were mentioned by Shaykh al-Islam Muhammed Ibn Abdul Wahaab towards the end. He says, for example, Ma'ruf. Some of these people, they call upon Ma'ruf or Abdul Qadir al-Jilani. Ma'ruf is Ma'ruf al-Qarhi, and he was one of the awliya, and he was one of the well-known people in Iraq. Ma'ruf al-Qarhi, he was well known. And the people used to worship him, the grave worshippers used to worship him. And Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, he was one of the scholars of the Hanbalis. He was one of the Hanbali scholars, and he was also from Iraq, and he was a noble imam. But when he died, they began to believe that he can bring benefit and he can bring harm. So they built something over his grave, and the Sufis began to take him as an imam for the Mutasawwifa, the people of the Tariqah that they call the Qadiriyya. Yet Abdul Qadir al-Jilani is free from these people. He has nothing to do with these people. May Allah have mercy upon him. And he was known to have rectitude, to be upon istiqamah, to have ilm, to have knowledge, and to have taqwa, to be pious. And he was one of the biggest people from the madhab of Imam Ahmad. He has many, he has many works. He has, in fact, he has a very famous work called Al-Ghunya. Al-Ghunya, it's one of the a book that he wrote. As for Zayd bin al-Khattab, then he was a Sahabi. He was the brother of Umar ibn al-Khattab. He was actually the brother of Umar radiyallahu anhuma, and he was killed in Yamama, a place called Yamama, and he was buried there. And again, there was something built upon his grave, like a dome or a tomb. And when Shaykh al-Islam Shaykh Muhammad rahimahullah, when he came to this place, he destroyed this building, and we find that as a result of that, it doesn't exist today. And all praise is be due to Allah, and it will never ever stand again, inshallah. And as for Zubair is Zubair bin al-Awwam radiyallahu anhu. He was a helper to the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam. And as for the others, the other awliya and the Sahaba, then the grave worshippers worship them, However, these people are not happy with that they are being worshipped. And then the Shaykh says, but these people, these grave worshippers, they didn't just stop there. They weren't happy and satisfied with just worshipping the awliya and the righteous. Rather, they began to worship the tawaghit, the disbelievers, the heretics, from the people who are actually magicians and who are fortune tellers. Right? So they even began to worship them. Magicians, fortune tellers, hululiyin, these people who worship in who believe that Allah indwells within His creation. The ibahiyin, the ibahiyya, these are people. The ibahiyya are people who believe, for example, that because the whole of creation is just one single entity, right? There's just Allah the Creator, so we can't distinguish between anything. Therefore, the halal, that which is haram, no longer holds. So, for example, a man can have relations with his mother, or with his sister, or with his daughter, right? So all of these forbidden relations no longer apply because of this belief of wahdatul wujud, that everything is a single thing, everything is a single entity, right? So those laws don't apply anymore. So these are the people that are referred to as al-ibahiyya, the ibahiyya. And the hululiyin, those who believe that Allah indwells within this creation. And these are those people who say that to actually abandon the commands and prohibitions is nearness to Allah. And we are not in need of commands and prohibitions. These are just for the common people, they're for the common people. And as for the people who believe in this, then they can just reach Allah directly. They're not in need in the likes of these things, right? So these people, these Quburiyin, didn't just stop worshipping the awliya and the righteous. Rather, they went to worship the likes of these evil, heretical, disbelieving people, the worst of the people. And then the Shaykh says, Shamsan and Idris and Yusuf, these were the tawaghit, they were false gods who used to be in Riyadh. And this was before the time of the da'wah of Shaykh al-Islam Muhammed Ibn Abdul Wahaab. And when the Shaykh came, he stood to perform jihad in the path of Allah, and he took over the Muslims in Riyadh. He dominated them, and he took power over them, and he put an end to the likes of these idols and these things that were worshipped besides Allah and other than them, and all praise is due to Allah. And that's the end of the Shaykh's explanation. That's also the end of this particular book. Inshallah, we'll stop the lesson there, and maybe next week there were some questions at the end. Maybe inshallah we'll just go through them in the next lesson before we begin the next treatment, inshallah. So we'll stop the lesson there, and we'll continue inshallah ta'ala next week. Jazakallah khairan. Barakallahu. Assalamu alaikum.